The book of Genesis, chapter 22, tells the story of Abraham taking his son Isaac up the side of a mountain, as God demanded Abraham sacrifice the boy as a test of faith. As they walked, Jacob said to his father, "The wood and the fire are here, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham replied, "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." And the two of them went on together. Kyle Tam's Mariah evokes that same feeling of dread and acceptance, of knowing what must be done, and the terrible price to be paid in blood. And despite of this, continuing forward, together, in hopes of appeasing a God that requires penance. Beautifully narrated and brutal to read, Mariah forces players to examine the world they inhabit and the bonds they share, and ask what they'd give to save them. This review covers the Mariah Ashcan, which was provided for free by the author. As the game is still in its funding and development phase, specific mechanics are subject to change before release. Mariah takes place in the 7th year of the time of judgment. Aerith used to be a utopia, but due to the desires of its people, the land itself suffered. The gods of Aerith waited patiently for a time, hoping their children would turn back from their wicked ways. They waited in vain. When the world began to strain under the weight of man's greed, the gods judged their creation to be wicked, and purged the land with flood and fire. Many have climbed the mountain that towers over your hometown. Moriah, both sacred and profane, is the place where the gods who have damned this world still live. Yet none of the people who scaled Moriah managed to make it to the god's abode. The road to the summit extracted a price too high to pay. Yet somehow, be it foolhardiness or desperation, you and your fellow players have taken it upon yourselves to climb the mountain, and beg the gods to spare your shattered planet. Except for the safety tools, the entire game is written in the universe, dictated in the second person. It's the first TTRPG I've encountered whose whole text is narrated from within the book itself. I won't deny it had a profound effect on me. Placing the reader of the game as its main subject challenged me directly, ensuring I felt responsible for what was happening during play. And as the mechanics section will make clear, I did not want that feeling. Mariah's gameplay is deceptively straightforward. You collaboratively create characters, flesh out your home village, and face a series of challenges by rolling dice, which can be upgraded from D4 up to D100. The complication, however, is the method by which you procure and upscale these dice. Your characters do not start out with the D4 that acts as your base die for overcoming challenges. At the beginning of every road to Mariah, your table's first challenge will be a wall of vines, impassable by all but one method. In front of the wall is a stone altar and a sharpened rock. As a table, your first collective decision will be which of your characters must be sacrificed to the gods. Tam smartly allows the sacrifice player to take on the role of game master, narrating the remaining challenges and acting as a guide to their comrades. But starting off by immediately killing a player, that's a stellar way to set the tone for your game. Once the sacrifice player takes their place among the gods, the remaining party members receive their D4s. In theory, the players would all roll their D4, trying to exceed each challenge's demand value, while describing what actions their characters take to survive each struggle. Unfortunately, each challenge's demand threshold increases, and soon cannot mathematically be overcome with only D4s. This is where the dice upgrade mechanic comes in. For every body part you sacrifice, your die will evolve to the next highest form, and you will be allowed to re-roll your result. Meaning, if you give up a finger, you get to roll a d6. If you give up 5 fingers, you get to roll a d20. But this upgrade only lasts for one roll, meaning an unlucky number can set you back several body parts. However, if you decide a challenge is too important to risk, you can simply sacrifice another character again, completing the task automatically in exchange for a life. As you move through each challenge, your table will continue to mutilate themselves in order to appease the gods. Your resources will literally be whittled away, and at each challenge you'll have to ask yourselves whether or not this journey is truly worth everything you've already paid. As Mariah doesn't offer any sort of permanent upgrade or advancement, it's difficult to talk about the kind of gameplay it incentivizes. It most clearly offers rewards in its respite, which are small breaks in between challenges where players can sit and think about the journey thus far. Respites provide your table with prompts, asking you to look back on the friends you've lost, the times when your troubles were less dire, and the futures that may still come to pass. I really like respites. They offer no gameplay reward, technically speaking. They don't regenerate lost body parts, they don't upgrade your die, and they don't bring your friends back from the dead. In fact, the Ashcan suggests that some characters may want to end their journeys during a respite, deciding to make a home in that very spot. From a purely gameplay standpoint, that's a terrible decision. You should, in theory, always make sure a character is as chopped up as they can stand, hollowed out like a model in an anatomy class, before you sacrifice them to instantly overcome a challenge. But Mariah eschews concepts of optimal play or min-maxing. It's just not about that. This game wants players to actually embody the characters they inhabit, and ask themselves what that person would honestly do if they'd suffered this miserable ascent. When whoever is left of your party finally makes it to the peak to plead forgiveness of the gods, they have to feel like their blood-soaked victory is earned. Moriah is inspired by games like Lisa and Soul Sacrifice, but that doesn't really cover the breadth of its appeal. Anyone familiar with Jewish and Christian stories will appreciate its religious imagery, and may sympathize with a tone as oppressive as a jilted god's watchful gaze. And anyone looking to invert the regular RPG schedule will appreciate Moriah's methodical disempowerment of its players. But I think Moriah's greatest strength is when it provides a foil to its brutality. We're all kind of resigned to the fact that the world as we know it is gone. COVID has stolen 2 years and millions of lives. Our governments are unwilling and unable to combat the rise in both global temperatures and fascism. Every day, it's hard to feel like we're not just along for the ride, taking our stripes and pressing on. But Mariah instrumentalizes that suffering. It gives you no false hope about your chances of survival, but it does grant the possibility that your sacrifices haven't been for nothing. And after your trials, it takes a step back and forces you to think of what you'd truly give for a chance to fix the world. I hope players of Mariah can see that behind these bloodstained altars and gruesome challenges, the game is asking them a question. Isn't this broken world worth saving, as long as we save it together?